All right. So I just put these, I put a block of wood, a couple paint sticks, and these boxes in here. So when I lay this piece on, it won't keep trying to fall down in there. It'll kind of, it should kind of stay up so I can work with it. Grab a couple clamps here. Now I still use this type of clamp as well. So when I have pieces like this, I want to clamp to the back wall, I'll just clamp them up. So I have clamps everywhere. This is a very important spot right here because to eliminate twisting, I gotta have the top and bottom of these almost identical as far as where it ends and where it has the arch in here. They have to be almost identical or it will look twisted when it's on top of the piece. So people think this stuff is just easy. It's not. I mean, if you're making stuff that's worth making, it's not that easy. I mean, it's not overly difficult, but anyone can do it. You guys definitely can do it. And like I said, you can go back and check out some of the other videos. I've covered a lot of issues that the artists have. New artists, older artists, it doesn't matter. I've covered a lot of things that they have problems with in my some of my older videos. Well, not older, but videos before this one. So you can go ahead and check those out. In each video I try and give some sort of secret or tip or something, just to get you guys up and running. Because a lot of guys I know that do this stuff will not help anyone. It's almost like they're afraid that if they help someone, they're going to lose out or something. I don't understand it. I guess my thing is, God has blessed me so much that I want to help as many of you guys as I can. I don't ever remember taking an art class in school. I may have taken one, and I'm sure I flunked out of it. I think the teacher probably told me just to get out of here. You can't make it in art, so just get out. And that may have even been in elementary school. I don't remember. But it doesn't matter. So what I'm saying, I guess, is if I can do this, guys, you definitely can do it. So what I'm doing is just, you know what, I'm going to move you guys in a little bit closer, just so you can see this portion a little bit better. So let me just move this camera in just a little bit more. All right, so this upper vertical wall is supposed to touch this horizontal wall, and it's supposed to be tight. So I'm doing my clamps, is just squeezing it in so that they just butt up right tightly together so I can tack it, because when I come back with my TIG welder, I don't want, you know, any gaps in there at all. I just want it tight. Because with a piece like this, oftentimes I like to fuse weld. do not want to have to add a bunch of rod. So if these gaps are tight, I can just fuse weld it all the way around. And I can get done welding it a lot faster because I'm not having to dip. So that's one of the advantages of you know, getting your pieces fit up, you know, is nice and tight as possible. And so that's why when you guys see me using a bunch of clamps everywhere, that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to get my gaps to be as tight as I can when I'm TIG welding. If I'm MIG welding, I don't worry as much because I want a gap about the thickness of my wire. Because if I don't have that gap, if the pieces are tight together when I MIG weld, the wire has no place to go. It'll just be sitting on top. And so you think you're doing good and all that stuff, but when you grind the welds off, you'll see the line of we'll just say the horizontal piece and where the wall is, where they come together, you'll see that line through there. You don't have any weld in there, and that's really a weak spot. So what I really try and do is, it depends on what I'm going to do as far as the weld procedure. Whether I'm going to MIG or TIG, it's different. So just think, if you MIG, you want to gap the thickness of your MIG wire. If you TIG, I don't want any gap. I want to be able to just melt those two pieces together. So that was a tip for you guys, a free tip. And like I normally say, I don't tell people at the shows, but I tell you guys, because you are that special group of people. You guys will probably be surprised at some of the questions I get at the shows. And I just don't have time, to answer all the questions. And it's really funny that when you're at shows, you get artists that are not a part of the show, but they'll walk around like they're just, one of the people there to buy something. And they try to ask you a million questions. And I don't like it because they're trying to hide behind the cloak of them being just another buying, patron. I mean, if you're an artist and you have a question, ask me. Don't try and, beat around a bush or hide behind a bush trying to get some free information. Just come out and ask if you need information. And if I have time, I'll give it to you. But don't try and hide and be tricky. So I guess my goal for you guys is to teach you as much as I can, because I want you to get out there, and if you desire to make money, I want you to be able to do that. If you just want to make beautiful art, crazy art, I want you to be able to do that. But I know what it's like trying to learn how to do this stuff, and no one's willing to help you. And it's not, oftentimes not about you not knowing how to, make art. Sometimes it's about the thickness of metal we use. Like for your base that's going to sit on the ground, your piece is going to sit on top of, or pedestals, people don't know the thicknesses. So they're guessing. They go to a weld supply store and ask those, or not a weld supply, but a metal supply store and ask those guys. They don't know, oftentimes. They just sell metal. If you go to shows and ask artists, oftentimes they won't tell you. Because they want to keep it a secret, because they want to make all the money. Which is crazy to me. So I made a video on making a pedestal not long ago. You can check that out. And that'll tell you the thickness of metal we use for our pedestals that we set the pieces on, like at shows, or if someone want to buy a pedestal for their house, you can make one for them. Charge them, $300, $400, $500, $600, $1,000. Just depends on what material you use and how elaborate it gets. But that's the kind of stuff I show you guys. Like, for example, with this piece, this is, I think 11 gauge. And the piece I just bent was 14 gauge, because it's a little bit easier to bend than this, 10, 11 gauge. So the trick to it is your thicker pieces will have all the shape to it. You'll cut it out with your plasma cutter. The pieces that are thinner will follow the thick piece. Like this, if this was the thick metal and this in here was thick metal, it would be very difficult to get that thick metal to follow this arc, because it's difficult to bend this on an English wheel or what's called a slip roller. Very difficult, because oftentimes slip rollers will only do like up to 16 gauge. You would have to get a pinch roller to bend stuff this thick. Those are very expensive, extremely heavy, take up a lot of space. They're not, oftentimes, some of them are single phase, but a lot of them are 3 phase. That's the type of electrician you have to have an electrician run for you, 3 phase. I mean, it's a lot to it. So it's best to, when you have your rolls like this and the thick stuff, cut that out with your plasma cutter or your cut-off wheel or whatever. And then when you want to follow those lines, you use your thinner metal. 16 gauge, 14 gauge, stuff like that. When I'm using stainless steel, I'm gonna move this camera back out, guys. All right. So this video has kind of gone but not really, from reaching to teaching, but I'm kind of doing both. I mean, I make mention of the metals I use in different videos most of the time, sometime. But in this case, when I use stainless steel, I mostly use 14 gauge for my thinnest metal. And on my thicker metal with stainless steel, I'll go from 10 gauge, 11 gauge, sometimes 12 gauge. It just depends on what I'm making. If I'm going up, up tall with a piece, I'll probably use 11 gauge. I mean, not 11, but maybe 12 gauge for my thicker metal, and I'll stick with the 14 gauge for the thinner metal. But like as I get down close to the ground with that piece, I might use 10 gauge, might use 11 gauge, because it's just a thicker gauge, it's stronger material. So the thinnest I'll go with stainless steel is 14 gauge, which is what this piece is, and which is what the piece is I rolled at the beginning of the video. I'm gonna roll this piece as well. But on the Core 10, I'll use 10, 11 gauge, and my thinner gauge will be either 14 or 16. Oftentimes I use 16 gauge on the Core 10, but 14 on the stainless steel for some strange reason. That's just kind of how I do it. When I make a pedestal, in the video I made on, I think it's called How to Make a Pedestal, or Making a Pedestal Step by Step. And like I said earlier, you've seen the thumbnail. I think I used probably 16 gauge on that particular, in that video anyway. Because when the technique I used in that video, I didn't want to have to cut 4 separate pieces for the 4 walls. So I used, I think it was 16 gauge. I took my my cut-off wheel and my grinding stone and just put grooves in it so I could bend the metal. And that way, when I bent the metal on the 90 degrees on the 4 walls, I only had 1 seam to weld. I didn't have to weld 4 seams all the way around, and then put a top on, then have to weld the 4 sides of the top. So I just welded 1 seam down the side, and then just put the plate on top and welded the 4 sides. So it just depends on really on what I'm doing. And that's kind of how I, put the pieces together. All right, let me get these off of here. So this is a kind of a piece I made. I talked about this in that video on clamps and all the other stuff I was talking about. But this is a clamp that I just got from Harbor Freight. I got 2 from Harbor Freight, got 2 from Menards. And they go into the hole, put this nut on the bottom, and I'm using this to clamp this down to the table in these positions. These were like at Harbor Freight, I think it was like, I don't know, $9 or something like that each, something like that. And at Menards, they were $7 a piece. And I brought them home, looked at them, they're identical, just have a different, this has Pittsburgh stamped on it, and Menards have some other name stamped on it, but they're the same thing, identical. Whereas had I bought these, from a, like a Weld Supply, or like Prime Weld, or those other companies that just manufacture this stuff, they're slightly different. They don't have this nut on. They don't have this nut on the bottom. They just stick into the table like with the 5/8, they just slide right into the table. Which I could make these like that. I could just weld a 5/8 sleeve on here so I can slide into the table. I might do that. New idea. But as opposed to paying, $40 a piece, $9 and $7 or something like that. Just makes more sense to me. All right, so what I'm gonna do now is just take the front skin, if you will, and just lay it on here, just kind of tack it on. And this is the skin that will go across the front of here. It's 14 gauge. Of course, it's 14 gauge stainless, of course. And I can go ahead and move this now because I don't need it right now. And these pins and the bolts that I use to lock these to the table, I made these too. I mean, you can buy them. They're not cheap. You can buy them, or you can make your own. And in the video I did, I explained how I made all these. So you guys can check that out. All right. So what I gotta do now, just take this piece, 14, put it in an English wheel, and get my arc on it to follow this arc. I think I'll do is I'll kind of stand it up. Let me get this clamp off of here. I mean, that clamp has this thing locked down. It it won't budge. That's with this one clamp. I love it. I just take it, turn it up like so. Then I take the piece, just lay it in here, get it kind of even here, lay it in, get a couple tacks, and I'll lay it on the side and kind of tack it in. But first I got to get the arc. Take this off for now. And I made 2 racks that go on each end of the table. And I made a video of how I did it, and you can check that out too. It holds all of my stops. I have what are called side stops. All the clamps you saw me use, I have those on here. I have some on another rack, identical rack on the other end. Like I said, I made a video on how to make that. You can either make your own, or again, you can go, I think it's Texas Metal or something along that line. They make them, and other companies make them, but they're a lot more expensive than these. I just went and bought some, what is this? Maybe a little bit less than 1/4 of an inch, maybe 3/16, somewhere in there. That's what it looked like. It looked like about 3/16. Cut them out. Took my plasma cutter, cut the centers out. Took a separate piece. It's a long piece. I think it's 2 inches. Put it on my drill press, drilled holes in it. Welded the 2 pieces together. Spray painted it. Hung it up. But like I said, I think I made a video on how to do that as well. So you can check that out. I'll put a link up, or not a link, but the thumbnail, so you can check the thumbnail out and then go to YouTube and pull it up. So I'm gonna teach you guys how to do this, and teach you guys as best I can how to save some money. All right. Let me just figure out which is the prettier side. And that's what you do too, guys, when you're when you buy metal, when you're in the metal store and you're buying the metal, you check for gouges in the metal. Because oftentimes these metal stores they don't sell you the best of everything. They just sell you what they get. And it just depends on what they get from their suppliers. That's what they're going to sell you. I mean, so you have to check it to make sure there are no really deep gouges. And if there are deep gouges, you can figure out how you can hide it on your piece. It's okay, you can let them know that there's a gouge on here or a slight bend in the metal or a hump or a dip. You let them know, oftentimes they'll give you a discount on the metal because you can't use the entire piece of metal. But you tell them that, but you know that you can get a hammer and flatten the metal back out, or you can take that same metal and hide it someplace. Like this has a little scratch on it. I'll put it on this end because I know this end is going to slide through the base, so that people never see that little, indent that's in this metal. So it doesn't matter. But if you're buying the metal and you can take your fingernail and slide it across and your fingernail goes down into like a deep scratch and you can't hide it, don't buy that piece of metal if you can. Unless you want to weld over that deep groove and grind it down. I mean, that's one way to do it, but if you don't have to, why do it? So this piece has a small little scratch in it. I'm sure I can grind it out, but I'm gonna take this piece and put it on that end, like I said, so it's gonna slide through the base portion, so you never really see that piece. So I'll just make sure that would be the bottom. And this has a pretty good arc to it, so I'm gonna have to roll that pretty tight in order to make that fit. So back to the English wheel. And I really don't have to have my lines, my angles so angular, if you will. I could have smoother lines, but it's just the more organic the piece is, the more people like it. And by organic, I just mean, how the lines flow. If everything is just straight up and down, people don't like it as much. But if you put more, arc to it, people just seem to like that better for some strange reason. I guess it's just more pleasing to the eye, I guess. It's not too bad. I think this is needs to be rolled some more. Yep, a little bit more. I always have this really rolled fairly tight in there. And I always run into, not issues, but having to bend my metal pretty tight to fit in there. And then everything else kind of just flows out. But that's just how I do it. I mean, some of my designs are somewhat complicated, but they're nothing compared to some of the stuff my wife comes up with. I mean, she, of course, welds, grinds, plasma cuts, does all this stuff. But sometimes she'll almost go too far, and you know the designs, so we just have to kind of tweak it back a little bit, because oftentimes I know exactly what the metal will do and what we can do with the metal. But sometimes if you, I mean, we go beyond just the normal stuff all the time. But sometimes you just have to kind of just pull back and say that's not going to work, because it's just too complicated. I mean, you have compound, you know, curves, which the English world is designed to do, but sometimes it's just not worth it. I mean, unless I'm going to charge, you know, $20,000 for a piece or something like that, something crazy. So I really just try to stay away from really complicated pieces. And what I've learned too is that most of the time, people don't like complicated, really complicated pieces. They like the more simple flowing pieces, which is kind of strange. So I'll spend time with a piece with all these, you know, complicated lines and stuff, and people don't buy it. It'll just be some strange person will come by it at the last minute after I've had it for a year or so, and they'll love it and they'll buy it. But that's not the norm. So if you guys can keep your pieces, you know, pretty simple, just with nice lines, nothing too complicated, people love it. Keep saying I'm gonna kind of change my style up and do something a little different, which I do sometimes, but people know you for a style, and they like your style, and they buy pieces from you. So I figure, you know, why change? Just keep doing what I'm doing. Let's see how this thing looks. Wow, looks really good. See, the problem with these, this is what I was talking about earlier, when the piece will twist. Like on the old table I had, most of the time, this piece would have a little twist to it. The bottom would have a twist, the top would have a twist. But this is really straight, because it was clamped down to this really straight and flat table. Wow. This right here and that makes it worth me spending the money that I did to buy this table. Really impressive. So now, just got to put this on here, get it lined up, and just, you know, tack it and just kind of roll it out. This spot right here is going to have this piece of metal on it. I got to put this piece in the English wheel and roll it out so it'll fit in this area in here. The thing I have to think about when I make this piece is when I put the donut on that piece, I have to take the bottom flap off of that piece to get in there, because there's a hole drilled in the side of that piece. I gotta get in there to weld the donut to the top of that piece. Then I take this piece, slide it into the bottom piece, lay it on top of the donut. I have to go into this hole right here to weld in there, because there's a hole that I drill under here. The donut sits here. I weld the donut from the inside. After you do all of that, Okay, let me back a little bit. After I put this piece on here, I tack it on, I gotta bend this, put it in here, tack it on. And then once I'm finished tacking this on in here, I'll go ahead, and of course I'll clamp everything to the table. I'll go ahead and weld this whole thing up. After I weld it all up, I gotta take this piece back off so I can get in there to weld the donut to this on top of the piece. Then I gotta put this back on to cover that hole and weld the piece up. The thing I have to think about, donut is gonna be in this section here. The donut will have all those designs and everything on it. You know, to be looking pretty and everything. So when I weld this piece back on, I have to be able to grind the weld off of here without having the grinder touch the donut. And the donut, I mean, the donut is right here. I mean, it's right there. So when I weld this wall on, I want it to extend past the bottom edge of this. So this will just kind of sit right down in there, and I can weld more from up here than having to weld more, you know, down here. Because if I weld these pieces together down here, and you see the weld right here, I'm gonna have to get my grinder in there to smooth that weld out. And when I do that, I'm taking a chance on touching that donut with that grinder and screwing the design up on the donut with the grinder. So I have to be more focused on getting more of the weld on the inside here. So when I grind it, I'm staying away from that donut as much as I can. I'll put a piece of thick cardboard in there so I can stay away from that donut as much as I can, but you just never know. So those are, I think I mentioned in multiple videos of how difficult this piece reaching is to do. But I'm the cause of the torture that I put on myself with this piece. This was a piece I designed right when COVID started, when everything shut down. COVID shut down March 23rd, 2020. And I started designing this piece probably about a week after that, because there was nothing going on. I mean, you couldn't go to the store. They had shut everything down. So I came up with this piece in my mind. This piece, there was another piece, we call it Viking ship. I'll put a picture of that up, Viking ship. I came up with a piece called Tulip. It was about 4 feet tall, and it had a stainless steel piece on the inside that spun. So that's Tulip. I came up with the piece Slope. Came up with that piece. It's two pieces, one set on top of the other, and has a donut in the center. Called that Slope. I came up with that piece. Actually, I came up with multiple pieces during that time because there was nothing else to do. You know, you couldn't go out and work. All the art shows, nothing was going on. Everything was shut down. So that was the time I just came up with these pieces. And I thought this would be a cool piece at the time. I mean, it's a cool piece. We've sold a lot of them. But I didn't think that it would be this difficult to make this piece. I mean, after all the pieces I made of this piece, it should be easier by now. But maybe with the table it'll make it easier. I think the last one I made, it was the last one I made. It took me a week after I got the piece just about complete. I had to take it apart, cut some pieces out of that piece in order to get this top piece to go straight, because everything wanted to lean this way and turn that way. Oh God, it was a nightmare. So that was the piece really that made me decide to go out and buy this table, because the tables I had, like I said, had warps in them. They were twisted because I made the pieces we call them ribbons, the big loop pieces. When I had those on the table making it, it just demolished the table. The table was terrible in the first place. It came from Harbor Freight, but after those pieces, the table just demolished. So that's what made me get these tables here. There's no pieces I can put on this table that would demolish these tables because the metal is so thick that they don't budge. They just, if you guys want to get a table, get one from Prime Weld. I keep plugging their, I'm not sponsored or anything by them yet, but I keep plugging their name because the tables are so darn good. And the price is so reasonable. All right, so I'm going to set this on here now and just kind of just tack it in. While I'm doing this, I'm thinking I got to get this out. So when I weld that piece in, it won't damage that donut. So that's all the stuff I think about when I do this. There's a slight little high spot right there. Put it in the English wheel and try to smooth that out. Yep, I can feel it right there. Try something. Better. It's just when I looked at it, it had a little dip going up this way. It wasn't completely flat. It had a slight little rise to it, if you will. And I can't have that. All right, let me see if I can tack this in. Now it's just a matter of just kind of pulling it in, giving the clamps on it. I'm just trying to keep this as even as possible. And I'm sure I mentioned it in another video, the reason I do mostly TIG welding is because the welds are much softer with the TIG welder than they are the MIG welder. Much softer. And the reason that's important is because when you start grinding, it makes a huge difference with TIG welds over MIG, especially with stainless steel. With mild steel, there's a difference, but whether I weld with a MIG or TIG with mild steel, it doesn't make that big of a difference when it comes to grinding. But with stainless, oh my gosh, it's terrible when you use when you MIG weld. When you MIG weld the stainless steel. I did a video on I was making a base for Heart of Man, all stainless steel sculpture. This is it right here. had my wife welded the base up with mild steel. I mean, she MIG welded it. I mean, and that thing took me about a day and a half to grind that base because that weld was so hard. And I used grinding stones. I didn't use a flat disc or a just a regular flat, F-L-A-T, flat disc. I didn't use a regular flat disc or a flap, F-L-A-P. I had to use a rock stone to do it because it was so hard. I was going through discs like crazy. So I said, nah, it's not worth it. So I got one of those stones and had to use that. I went through, I think, 2.5 stones to finish that thing. So I said, if this, I will do my best to never MIG weld a stainless steel piece like that again. I mean, the base was probably almost about 4 feet tall. I had to grind up the 4 sides and the top. Oh God, that was the worst. She did an excellent job welding because there were not very many pinholes after I grinded it. But it was just the fact that I had to grind it. And it took forever. And it was so loud, that grinding stone against that stainless. Oh my God. But it turned out beautifully after I got it all done. This is a benefit of having this type of table. Like I said before, I would have had to have taken clamps like this. On the old table I had, would have been under the table, trying to come through those slots to find a place to clamp this down, because what's happening is in certain spots, this horizontal piece was sticking up higher than the vertical piece. So I had to take that clamp, put it on there to get it down back even again. And now down here, in a couple spots, this vertical wall is a little bit higher than this horizontal piece. So I'm gonna have to get my screwdriver or something and put under here, pry it up to get it even so I can tag it. Have screwdrivers right here. And I just put my screwdriver between these two pieces and just kind of do like a slight little roll, and I'll just take this stainless and pull it up until it comes pretty close to matching up. Sometimes I don't mind a little high area on this vertical piece with that if I'm TIG welding, because I'll use that metal to fuse the two pieces together, and I won't have to use a much TIG rod, because I'm using that metal to fuse it together. So I do that sometimes. Just depends on the situation. So guys, I'm telling you this stuff because I had no clue about this stuff. I mean, the guy that was, I guess you can call him kind of like a mentor, I guess, not really, but I mentioned him a couple times. Wasn't wasn't too much help. Because I guess I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what to say. Guess he didn't want competition, I guess. I don't know. And then he started saying some of my pieces looked like his pieces. I didn't think so. But guys, when you're mentored by somebody, sometimes you take on some of their thought process of how they, think when they're making something. But I think, I don't know what his issue was, but I heard an artist say that in order for him to grow, he had to get away from his mentor, and that's exactly what I had to do. Now, had he been like me, I probably would stay with him for forever. I mean, really good guy, really nice guy, but he just, I don't know. I don't know. And I say like me because I'm willing to teach. I'll teach you guys, I mean, just as much as I know. Because it's just what I do. I mean, people ask me, why do I put on YouTube what it took me so long, to learn, and showing you guys the techniques that I use and the pieces I make. I mean, what if somebody steal your idea? I mean, what do I do about that? I mean, but the people that watch me, they don't steal ideas. They make their own. Because I mentioned before, the worst thing that an artist can do is steal someone else's work and call it their own. They're not an artist, they're just someone out, a street peddler. They're just peddling stuff that they've copied. So I don't have those kind of people watching me, so I don't worry about it. My people are the best. My people are the smartest people on the planet. And they're going to come up with some stuff that is a whole lot better than mine. So I don't worry about that.